Has the July Revolution failed like the Arab Spring?
Now, specifically in the case of Bangladesh, India from the beginning had a security relationship with Bangladesh, especially the Awami Party. So the events of 71, India played a very, very critical role. And that role continued as Mujibur Rahman and then his Awami Party were there. So because of the Awami Party, India actually came to have quite a close relationship with Bangladesh. You've got to keep in mind that when the 71 war happened, the view in India was, is we defeat Pakistan, and then Bangladesh actually becomes a province of India. And so a lot of Indian thinkers were really unhappy when India supported Bangladesh, but Bangladesh stayed as a separate country. But what they said is Bangladesh now is in our sphere of influence, so we're okay. Interesting, it looks like Tariq Rahman's going to be the Prime Minister. He was here in the UK with us for 15 years. Quite undercover, actually. He didn't really make much statements. He didn't really do much here. There is a network of people who abuse the law. There's one rule for them, another rule for somebody else. And they're involved in sex trafficking, pedophilia, and debauchery, and they're satanic worshippers as well. This is all in there. This, 5 years ago, this was a conspiracy. Not anymore. These are facts. This is how these people live. America informed Iran, we're going to bomb your nuclear plant, which meant move your nukes, right? And then the funniest thing was when Trump praised Iran for letting them know that they're going to bomb the Al Udeid base in Qatar.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another podcast on Ekhoni Shomoi. In today's episode, we're focusing on one of the most important but under discussed changes in our region, the new power map of South Asia after Bangladesh's July Revolution. With national elections in Bangladesh now less than a week away, we'll explore how the United States and China are shaping the future of the region. To help understand this, we are honored to have Adnan Khan as our guest today. He is a political analyst, author, activist, tech specialist, and the founder of the geopolitics website, thegeopolity.com. He has written extensively on international issues for over 2 decades on areas such as economics, energy, defense, Middle East, and the political Islam. He has authored several books, including Global Trends of the 21st Century and 100 Years of the Middle East. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Adnan, and thank you for joining us today.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Brother Adnan, even though when I first reached out to you, we were supposed to talk just about South Asia, but so much has happened since. I have a few extra questions for you. First, we've seen the horrors of the Epstein Files, and they have revealed some disturbing truths about powerful figures in the West. Does this expose a fundamental hypocrisy in how Western nations advocate for human rights and women's rights globally? And why has there been a relatively mute response to these revelations within America itself?
Jazakallah khair. Yeah, I think this whole year, 2026, we're in the second month now. It started with a bang. You've had what's happened in Venezuela, you've had Iran, and then these Epstein revelations. I think we're at the point now where can it really get any worse? Every time there's the files are declassified. Um, to be honest with you, I like a lot of people and still trawling through the treasure trove of reports and emails and all this information we're finding, and I'm coming across the sinister, the unthinkable, and you're thinking, can it really get any worse? And there's a couple of things now that you're seeing a pattern. You know, everyone who's anyone, politicians to presidents, billionaires to big businessmen, royalty, academics, and scientists, everyone was part of this network. You find Epstein was engaged with these people. They were part of his network. They were emailing, they were joking, they were requesting things. So this isn't just a couple of bad apples. Well, if you want to call this bad apple, then everyone's a bad apple. We're talking about your elites here, your leaders, your big businesses, your billionaires. These are decision makers. These are people that have a big say over most countries. And you mentioned your point, why are people quiet? Well, fundamentally, because everybody's white, everybody's Western. it contradicts the stereotype we've been hearing that the barbarians are all outside the West. The backward people that need to be civilized, they look more like me and you. They're not light skinned. They are people who don't speak English. What you're seeing time and time again is this is the cream of the crop of the West, whether it's their leadership, whether it's the big business, and don't forget celebrities are all involved in this as well. So this is why all the right wing and these influencers always talk about the superiority of their civilization. Of course, they're quiet because their civilization hasn't just been exposed. What it's actually showing is what we always believed, what was always called a conspiracy, now actually has been proven to be fact. And actually, this isn't Epstein with a few perverts. This is Epstein with everyone who's anyone. In the UK here, Prince Andrew, the second son in line, well, he was second, third in line to the throne. He's completely lost all his credibility. He's lost his reputation because what he did was he kept communicating with Epstein, and actually he went to a lot of his parties that he was doing in his island. So when it comes to debauchery, when it comes to satanic worshipping, when it comes to networking, and I'm sure we're going to get to it, even Islam and Muslims is involved in these as well. So the right wing have got a problem because it's always the migrants that are the problem. It's always people coming from abroad that are the problem. It's people who look like me and you who are the problem. And what you're seeing is white people, the cream and crop of the West. And interestingly, lots of Zionists have been getting caught up with this as well, which isn't being spoken about. Most of the people that are involved in this are pro-Israel and pro-Zionist as well. And I'm sure we're going to talk about this. Even the link with Israel is all over these papers. So, it's as we say in the UK, it's a bad day in the office for everyone who supports Epstein. Even the leader of the superpower, Donald Trump, he said he had no relationship with the guy. He said he didn't really know the guy. Actually, there's thousands of emails that show you had an intimate relationship. And actually, he wasn't acting that different to Epstein as well. So I'm sure there's going to be more revelations. I mean, we've only got half of the revelations yet. And I think that they're going to get worse, and that's even if we get to see the other revelations. But what we've already seen is very damning. It's destroyed a lot of reputations, and actually, it really revealed the inner workings of the elite.
Yeah, so the half we've received, it's so horrific in itself. We can only imagine what the other half they're hiding is. Um, but then again, leading back to the question, the Western powers like USA especially has frequently pressured other countries on human rights, on women's rights, including Iran itself, which is probably on the brink of war, I would say. But with these, did these horrific incidents with Epstein and all um, occurred systematically, like through the years involving such powerful individuals? But is this an isolated case that it was just Epstein doing it, or does it reveal like something more systematic about power structures in the USA and maybe Europe and other countries as well? Will there be like other Epsteins, let's say, as well?
Mm. So, no, what this has really revealed is the wide scope and the people involved who are leaders, who are very influential people. They either looked the other way, which means they facilitated it, or they took part in it. And then you have a third category of people who networked with Epstein because he was a networker. He was a guy that developed relationships with anyone who's everyone, leaders, presidents, politicians, royalty. So everybody wanted to know him. And that's what you do when you're elite. You're a networker. You need to get things done. So this is why this is not a few bad apples. And actually, even proper right wingers are not even saying it's a few bad apples. Because if it's a few bad apples, then everyone that's coming up in the emails is a bad apple. And that's just too many people. And these are all your leaders. These are your scientists. These are your royalty. These are your celebrities. So what's going on here is it shows you the inner workings at the elite level, which is that they can get away with murder, that they ran a sex trafficking ring, and they got away with it for a long time. And the reason why he got away from it is because he was part of the elites. He was a networker. He did things for people. You've got, for example, an email in there from a school in Turkey led by a French head teacher. and he's complaining to Epstein that the country is just too conservative. I mean, he was bragging about how he converted one person from Islam to Kufr. And Epstein's saying, well, actually, the number of people converting it is way more than the number you've converted. So, the Muslim rulers are involved. The UAE is coming up again and again. The UAE seems to have an open agenda against Islam and Muslims. It's openly supporting Israel in the atrocities that it's committing. So, no, for these things to work, what you need is a whole network of people. And the network here is leaders, billionaires, people in very influential positions. So these are people that can facilitate it. There's a saying that you have that, the one who provides the knife or the gun to the murderer, he's as guilty. And although the saying means that the person who gives the knife is also part of the murder, what it means is you can't commit these acts on your own. You need people to help you, support you, look the other way, protect you, lie about it, misinformation. So this is why you can't say there's a few bad apples, because the bad apples are all your leaders, all your billionaires, all your thinkers. It's all of these people. So this is, this is the damning evidence for what we've always known. We've always known this. Maybe people in the West were a bit in denial that no, this doesn't really happen. This is just a discussion on conspiracy forums. Well, actually, we've been proven now the conspiracies were actually correct all along. There is a network of people who abuse the law. There's one rule for them, another rule for somebody else. And they're involved in sex trafficking, pedophilia, and debauchery, and they're satanic worshippers as well. This is all in there. This, 5 years ago, this was a conspiracy, not anymore. These are facts. This is how these people live. And if you go through the documents one after the other, some of it just unbelievable. You're thinking, okay, I knew this was a conspiracy. Do people actually do this? And they do. And it really makes you wonder when the majority of people in the world are just trying to make ends meet. They're just trying to raise their kids. They're just trying to survive. These guys are involved in acts with underage girls. These guys are up to things that you wouldn't even want your enemy to go through. This is what these guys are up to. So, the revelations show us a number of these actions. It shows us how these guys work. And I'm sure there's going to be even more from the next set of revelations that come out.
Now, moving on, there's another big thing happening, which is the almost a war with Iran. Now, in your work, you had a book called The Geopolitical Myth, where you wrote that Iran and the United States had sort of a hidden friendship beneath their public enmity. But current relations appear like genuinely hostile. How would you evaluate this shift? Has the relationship fundamentally changed, or is this just part of a longer geopolitical theater?
Hmm. So yes, it's interesting you raised that book. I think I wrote that in the 2000s, so it's quite a while back. And interestingly, nothing's really changed between Iran and America. I think, look, we've got to differentiate here between the rhetoric and what they say and the action that they're doing. They don't quite marry up. So, for example, Iran accuses America of being the Satan, it's the Shaitan, and Iran is anti-imperialist, and it's in a global struggle with America. America presents Iran as the state sponsor of terrorism. It's an unstable actor in the region, and its actions cause instability. So, they're on opposite polar ends. They can never come together. However, they were able to work together in Afghanistan. America has constantly praised the work Iran did in the north of Afghanistan. Because Iran stabilized the north of Afghanistan, it meant America could focus on the south of Afghanistan where the insurgency was. In Iraq, Iranian proxies and America worked side by side to stabilize the country. In fact, there was one period where Qasem Soleimani was actually giving coordinates to the US Air Force to do strikes on the ground in Iraq against ISIS. That was the level of relationship they've got. However, look, when America looks in the Middle East, America looks at Iran just as one power. America has a relationship with Egypt, has a relationship with Saudi, has a relationship with Israel. And what America prefers is you have a balance of power in the region. You have no one dominant power, they all balance each other out. If any one power becomes too powerful, then America will back the other groups to balance them out again. So, by Iran being the enemy, by Iran being an unstable actor, It then means the Gulf countries run to America, because how do we deal with Iran? Iran could bomb us. So that's perfect for America. America builds their defense industries. America provides them weapons. Israel can't deal with Iran on its own. It goes to America. So if America even puts pressure on Iran, Iran will come to the negotiating table and they will come to some sort of agreement. And interestingly, the 12-day war that we had last year, America informed Iran, we're going to bomb your nuclear plant, which meant move your nukes, right? And then the funniest thing was when Trump praised Iran for letting them know that they're going to bomb the Al Udeid base in Qatar. He put it on his Truth social media. I mean, is this how enemies work? And then even now, I think the attack that America keeps talking about that we're going to do, it must be the most telegraphed surprise attack in history. What happened to surprise attacks? People don't expect it coming. You catch them on the back foot. So when America keeps saying we're going to do it, what they're trying to do is trying to influence Iran's behavior. Let's come to a negotiating table. Let's come and talk. I mean, what was interesting was they were supposed to have talks in Turkey, and Turkey, Egypt, Saudi were going to be there. Then Iran says, let's move it to Oman. We want to have a face-to-face with you. Meaning there's some private things we want to talk to you about that we don't really want the other guys to know. Now, that doesn't mean, America isn't necessarily going to bomb Iran. It may, it can, it depends what it wants to get here. And I think just to finish on this, there's probably two things here. One caveat you've got to keep in mind is who wants war with Iran? Israel. Who wants war now is Israel. Who will always want war with Iran is Israel. Why? Because Iran is a power in the region, and that's a problem for Israel. Now, Israel and Iran, their war historically was in the shadows. Assassinations, take out their scientists, cyber attacks. Now it's out in the open, they're attacking each other. The problem here is they're about 1,000 miles apart. So in any war, Israel will need American help. So, it's Israel the one, because as far as Israel is concerned, we've had October 7th, and Israel has an opportunity of a lifetime now to expand. For security purposes, Israel can do whatever it wants. Israel's going after all the proxy groups in the region, and is going after its ultimate enemy, Iran. And for that, it needs America. And America has played along, but where you do the knockout, where you completely knock them out, that hasn't happened. Then the other thing is, as far as America is concerned, is any instability in the region. You've got the largest oil reserves. You've got the Straits of Hormuz, which is 20% of the world oil. If there was a war in this region, the country that will be affected the most by the energy and economic landscape is China. If there's a war, that whole area will come to a close. You won't have flights. So these are the two conflicting things America has to deal with. When it comes to Iran, America, it influences Iran's behavior by rhetoric, by its aggressive posture, by negotiations, and by removing sanctions. Don't forget, 10 years ago, 2015, Obama made a nuclear deal with Iran. Iran was allowed to have nukes, very low enrichment level, and Iran agreed to lots of inspections. It gave a lot of concessions, and in return, America removed the sanctions. So America and Iran have been talking for 20 years. They get aggressive sometimes, but they're able to come to agreements as well. That doesn't necessarily mean that in America, everyone's on the same page. So you do have congressmen who are so pro-Israel. For them, Iran is the enemy. We have to deal with Iran. But overall, if you look, whenever America needed Iran, they're able to work things out, and they're able to move forward. So, the key thing really is you've got to look at what they say, but more fundamentally, what they do. I agree, the rhetoric is their enemies. That is the rhetoric. That's very clear. That's the narrative. Actions, however, are very different. What you find is they've been working together in Iraq, they've been working together in Afghanistan, and even now they're talking as well. And unfortunately, a lot of our rulers are like this. Some of our rulers are very open with their relationship with America, but one of the ways the clerical regime gets credit amongst its people is that, look, we are defending the region against these imperialists. We are anti-imperial, we're in a struggle. That's their narrative. So they have to show that they're the enemies. So that's why even when these negotiations finish, the Iranian leadership will go back and say, America's the enemy, America's the Satan. That is purely for domestic consumption. And Trump does the same thing as well. Trump says all sorts every day. Half the stuff he doesn't even act upon, but it's just for purely domestic consumption. And this is important for us to understand because a lot of people are brought in to this Iranian narrative that they're in this struggle and we've got to support them. But what you find is, Iran constantly has worked with America and even strengthened. And just to finish on this point, America went into war in Iraq. It got bogged down with insurgency. And what they concluded is, look, we can't win this war. So what American thinkers started saying is that, look, we've got to bring Iran and Syria into the war. We need them because they know the proxy groups and they know who's who, right? And so what Iran did was to the proxy groups, put your weapons down, go and join the political process America set up. So most of the political class in Iraq are all pro-Iran. So the whole insurgency finished in the south of Iraq with Iran completely changed what it was doing. So rather than bleeding America to death, what did they do? They saved America in the end. And here we are today. So this is the action of Iran. This is consistently the action of Iran. And this is why, if you're going to remove this regime, what we would see is strikes, cyber attacks, massive demonstrations, the country coming to a standstill. The fact that that's not going on shows you that it's not in American interest to overthrow this regime at the moment. They will say the regime is really, really bad. They will say, how dare you kill your own people, which is really funny. Because when Iran kills its own people, how dare you? But when Israel kills 100,000 people, they say the complete opposite. So this is why, when you look at the statements are contradictory as well because the actions are completely different. So, that's quite a negative thing to talk about, but it's important for us to know what these rulers are up to because, a lot of people put hope in these rulers that they're going to navigate us through this when actually they're actually in bed with our enemies.
So, to summarize it for our viewers, the recent protests that we have seen in Iran itself, which the Western media portrayed as if it would overthrow the ruler, and the Shah was very vocal on Western media as well. So, the overthrow is not actually happening. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, a good template for this year is if you look at the actions the West did and you look at the actions that happened when the Shah was overthrown in 1979, you're not seeing any of that. And remember, Iran has protests every year. The clerical regime has failed the people. They've run the country into the ground. They've completely destroyed the country, which is like a lot of our rulers. So protests are normal in Iran. In fact, they've been happening every year. Do you remember a year or two ago when Masha Amini, the sister who died in custody, wasn't wearing the hijab properly? That led to mass demonstrations. So these demonstrations are quite normal, but the West, they give it coverage when they want to, and at other times they don't. You're right, the West did say the regime's going to fall, but I've been hearing for 25 years the regime's going to fall, and here we are.
So, moving on to the topic we're actually supposed to talk, Bangladesh and South Asia. So, following Bangladesh's July Revolution in 2024 and the fall of Sheikh Hasina, what we're seeing is it appears to be there's a shift in the power center in South Asia. For example, India's influence in Bangladesh has drastically decreased. Pakistan, at least on shore, remains adversarial to India, and Myanmar continues the persecution of Muslims. So the power structure here is very confusing for a layperson like myself. So, is South Asia actually experiencing a genuine realignment of power from, let's say, the US to China? Or what are these countries like? What are the roles they're actually playing in the transformation?
Mhm. So South Asia, as we have, it's really emerged on the international scene as a region that's important. Is once Pakistan tested the nuclear weapons in 1999. You've got two nuclear powers in this region now, so that makes it a very important region. Prior to that, it was important because it's right on the doorstep of Central Asia. You had the whole Cold War, you had the Afghan invasion by the Soviet Union. So what happened in the region is very important. What's really made it critical now is the emergence of China. That's the fun. That's what's, the emergence of China now means every country in this region has to decide what side are you on. So this side, historically, you had India linked to Russia. You had the British, and then obviously you had America as well. So the last 20 plus years, it's been America in this region. So what's changed is the emergence of China. That's really the differentiating factor. So India has to now take that into account. India has a trade relationship with China, but politically they're not on the same page. They have very different views. And keep in mind, India and China went to war back in 1962-63. So that's why they've always had a very tense relationship. Pakistan, interestingly, has a very deep and good relationship with China. They are defense partners, they're economic partners. However, politically, Pakistan's aligned with America, right? Then add to that Sri Lanka at the south of the subcontinent. That's a very important waterway. So which side Sri Lanka's on becomes really important as well. Now, specifically in the case of Bangladesh, India from the beginning had a security relationship with Bangladesh, especially the Awami Party. So the events of 71, India played a very, very critical role. And that role continued as Mujibur Rahman and then his Awami Party were there. So because of the Awami Party, India actually came to have quite a close relationship with Bangladesh. You've got to keep in mind that when the 71 war happened, the view in India is we defeat Pakistan and then Bangladesh actually becomes the province of India. And so a lot of Indian thinkers were really unhappy when India supported Bangladesh, but Bangladesh stayed as a separate country. But what they said is Bangladesh now is in our sphere of influence, so we're okay, even though it's a separate province altogether. So there's been a very close security relationship between the two. But India, what seems to have happened to India in Bangladesh now is exactly what happened to them in Afghanistan. They invested in the Northern Alliance government, and when the Northern Alliance government fell, they've got nothing in the country. So only now they're starting to talk to the Taliban now. Before the Taliban was the enemy. And the same thing has happened in Bangladesh. If all your investment is in one party or one ruler, if that ruler falls, you are going to lose everything. So obviously the Indian response was really dramatic. Their newscasters were like turning this into a Bollywood film. Like, oh my God, what's happened? They really blew it out of proportion. It looked as though they were surprised this happened. And actually, their problem was they've not developed relationships with anybody else because Sheikh Hasina obviously ruled like a dictator for a decade or so. So everything was through there. So now they're having to start all over again. And obviously the BNP has never been aligned to India. And then what really worries them is two things, China and Pakistan. So the BNP have always wanted a working relationship with Pakistan. They've always wanted that. So during the caretaker government, a Pakistani delegation went to Bangladesh and there was talk that Pakistan should accept some of the atrocities from 71. And then there was talk about defense ties as well. Pakistan developed a fighter jet with China, and Bangladesh wants that as well. And actually, there's potentially looks that there's going to be a working relationship. So that's a problem for India already. Bangladesh, who they share a border with, Pakistan's the first problem. Then the second problem is China. Bangladesh has an economic infrastructure relationship with China. China has funded some of the ports. China wants to get more involved in the economy. For China, Bangladesh is critical. Bangladesh and Myanmar, Burma are alternative routes to the Bay of Bengal and Indian Ocean. Otherwise, they're going to go through the Straits of Malacca, which is problematic. I would say Bangladesh is more important for China. So Bangladesh is more important for China than the other way around. China needs Bangladesh. Bangladesh is part of a geo strategy of circumventing the world's oceans. Bangladesh's relationship with China is important. Economically, they will help. And really, if they want to counter India, they will have to work with China. So this is what's changing in the region. The China emergence is the new factor. So, Pakistan and India are having to look at this. And potentially there will be a problem here for America as well. The more China gets involved in this region, then the more this region will shift from America to China. And that's a problem for it. So, once these elections are done, the ruling party will then have to look at how it plans to navigate this. Interesting, it looks like Tariq Rahman's going to be the Prime Minister. He was here in the UK with us for 15 years. Quite undercover, actually. He didn't really make much statements. He didn't really do much here. But he's going to have to navigate this. And in many ways, he faces the same challenges as the caretaker government, and he faces the same challenges as the Awami League government. The economy, dealing with poverty, foreign relations, infrastructure. He faces those as well. And, people came out on the streets in Bangladesh and had enough. And you're having elections now, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this. We're having elections now, but nothing fundamentally changed. There's been no constitutional reforms. You've got some new faces now, or new old faces, I like to say. Nothing's fundamentally changed. So the elections are taking place, but yeah, the ruling party is gone. They're in disarray. Sheikh Hasina is gone, but you've just you're going to get a new face now who his family's been involved in politics really for the last 40, 50 years. So obviously we'll have to wait and see, but definitely this region is boiling. There's a lot going on, and that's what's worrying everybody who's involved here.
And with the fall of Hasina, we often see that regime changes often come with political influence from another country. So Hasina was basically made Bangladesh into a vassal state of India. So was there other political power structure that helped this regime change? Was it China? Was it USA? What do you think it was?
No, if there was anyone, it would have been the US. It would have been in their interest. I mean, they've never been able to get full control of Sheikh Hasina. This has always been a problem for America. And then, yeah, the Chinese relationship became a bit problematic as well. So, in that sense, it's worked out really good for America. Sheikh Hasina's gone, the ruling party's gone, and the BNP have always been closer to America than they were to anybody else. So, in that sense, it becomes important. You've got Bangladesh on one side, you've got Pakistan on the other side, and India even has a close relationship with America as well, although you could argue it's not really a vassal like the other two countries. And actually, at the moment, there seems to be quite a bit of tension in the relationship. So, for America, this becomes an important region. And what happens in South Asia will affect Central Asia. In fact, for America, for most of its history, it didn't see South Asia and Central Asia as separate. They saw them as one region, really. So, getting control of this region gives you access to Central Asia, and then you've got China there as well, and then you've got the Bay of Bengal, the Indian Ocean. So it's a very geostrategic region.
Yep. My last question to you might be a very controversial question. We haven't asked this question for quite a bit of time. Has the July Revolution failed like the Arab Spring?
Hmm. So I don't think we could say it has failed yet because it's still ongoing. However, it's not looking good. And I say this for a number of reasons. Even the new party, the Citizenship Party, the students, the young people, interesting, they've set up their own party because they're realizing if we replace the Awami League with BNP, well, what's the difference? It's all the old guard again, all coming in. However, obviously, these two parties and the army, they've dominated the politics of the country. None of the constitutional reforms have made any progress. And even the constitutional reforms, it's all tinkering. So, they want to reduce the powers of the prime minister. They want to give more power to parliament. They want to make sure what Hasina was doing can't happen again. So, in my view, the reforms don't even go far enough. The reforms are really just touching at the surface level. There's no discussion here about institutions. There's no discussion here about the relationship Bangladesh has with other countries. There's no talk about the fundamental structure. So even the constitutional reform they're calling it sounds very fancy. However, you start looking at the details. There's nothing in the proposal that's fundamental. That's actually going to change the actual architecture of the country. However, I think I think people are happy Hasina's gone. It's a bit like Syria, really. People are just happy the regime's gone. In one way, they're prepared to have a long honeymoon period because at least we can eat, at least we can survive. Things were getting really, really bad. However, I think a year and a half, we're going to be at this problem again. And already the BNP have said they're going to continue with the IMF money. The IMF have a track record of messing countries up. They've already said. So again, it showed you the BNP, they've ran a campaign not on change. They've just ran a campaign on we're not the Army League. So they're not planning to make changes. I watched the interview, the Al Jazeera interview with the Jamaat Islami Amir the other day. It's a bit of a car crash interview. And, even him, no fundamental changes, just we'll do what the people want. When he was asked about Sharia, all of that, he goes, well, whatever the people want, we will do. So they don't even have any plan. And they most likely will be part of a coalition government in some form or shape. So, not to be negative, people lost their lives in that revolution. During Hasina's reign, many, many people lost members in family. In the UK, we have many Bengalis who have come over and, they've got mental health issues because of what they witnessed and what happened to them. and their families under the Hasina government. So, not to, talk down upon that, because, they are real victims of what happened. People lost their lives, they gave up a lot. However, the changes don't seem to be going far enough at all. And maybe, this is the first round. There's a long path to go yet. That's how these things unfortunately go. I mean, obviously, we all hope, you rise up, you remove the ruler, change comes. It doesn't always work in a linear fashion. It could be there's a few ups and downs, but, just sitting afar, my observation is, okay, you're having elections. It's, just another party that's been out of power for a long time. However, the constitution is still the same, the legal system is still the same. There's talk of making some changes, but even these, they definitely don't go far enough at all. So there's a good possibility. Look, in a year or two, we're going to be back here again. We've seen this in other countries as well. People are just happy the old regime's gone. So that's possible. So, to be more positive, look, what people need to do is don't accept anything unless it's fundamental change. The leader, whoever dominates parliament, become the leader. They're going to make promises. They're going to say, give us time. They're going to say, look, there's a lot of issues to deal with. But, be clear what you want. What are the fundamental things that have to happen? What are your red lines? And these have to be repeated again and again. Even the demands from the students, a lot of them were Hasina needs to go. The Awami League needs to go. There's nothing more than that. What's your policy on economics? What do you want to see into the relationship with China? What about the export market? I've not seen any of these discussions really take place. Now, it could be people are just happy the regime's gone. So, no, I wouldn't say the revolution's failed. However, it's not looking good the direction it's going. So, it needs to be brought back on track so it goes in the right direction.
Inshallah, may Allah give us the power to put it back. But thank you, Brother Adnan, for joining us today and for your insights. And to our viewers, thank you for joining us today. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you in another episode. Assalamu alaikum.